General home safety tips include storing potentially hazardous items. Lotion could be confused as mayonnaise or paint confused as food. You don't want to put paint in a bowl because then it might look like cereal or soup or something, or ketchup even, if you have little small containers. So medication, you can imagine medication management must be difficult for someone if they can't recall whether they took their medication today. You start talking about medication for diabetes, blood pressure, some major medication that needs to be managed appropriately each day for people that are progressed in their dementia.
And maybe not leaving the medication out if you're managing it for them so that they don't go and take it on their own and over-medicate.
Yeah, right. So alcohol, locking up matches, anything, sharp objects sometimes. I've even heard of families that have taken the knobs off of the stove that turn the stove on, keeping cleaning products out of the way.
Welcome to Aging in Style with me, Lori Williams. I'm an optimist by nature, and I believe you can follow your dreams at any age. My grandmother's journey with dementia ignited a passion in me to work with seniors. I've spent the past 13 years learning about seniors and aging. In my mid-50s, I followed my own dream and founded my company where I use my expertise to help seniors locate housing and resources. On this podcast, we cover all aspects of aging. Join us each week to meet senior living experts and inspirational seniors who are following their dreams. The fact is, we're all aging, so why not do it in style?
Hi, welcome to today's episode of Aging in Style. We are talking today about home safety, but not just about home safety. We're talking about home safety specifically for people with Alzheimer's. And we're going to talk about how dementia affects safety and also some home safety tips. So we have the expert here today to help us through this. So we have Megan Rowe, who's been on the show before. She's with the Alzheimer's Association. She's the Senior Program Manager with the Alzheimer's Association, the Dallas and Northeast Texas chapter. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. It's always nice to be with you. I'm excited for today's topic as well.
Me too. So we talk so much on this show and then also in business, with working with seniors. I talk all the time about staying safe because people want to stay in their homes as long as possible for personal reasons, for financial reasons. And I totally get that. But we want them to be safe at home. And there are certain things when you have dementia that you have to think about that you don't have to think about if you don't have dementia. So why don't we talk about that and kind of really start talking about how does dementia affect safety?
Yeah, so we'll cover a few things with dementia and safety, but I do want to reiterate that it's really important to keep an eye out for warning signs of dementia for your loved ones, because one of these things that comes up is safety in the home when someone is experiencing symptoms of dementia. So what does that mean as far as safety goes? We can talk about how the brain is affected in many ways by Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So there's judgment, forgetting how to use things within the home, getting lost on one's own street. So like sense of time and place. And you start mixing these things together and it really gets complicated. So if you're, having a tough time with sense of time and place, but you're also having a tough time with judgment, you might stick, for example, the newspaper's wet into the oven to dry it and walk away and forget about it. My grandmother actually did that, my great-grandmother, and caused a fire in her kitchen. So that was a big safety risk. That was a warning sign for us that we had no idea there was other things going on for her.
Yeah, that reminds me, I have someone close to me who their father had dementia. And they were making things work best they could. He was going to a daycare center kind of thing, adult day stay, while they were at work. And so they brought him home and there was maybe like 10 minutes between when she was getting home from work and he was home alone for like this 10 minutes. Well, he wet himself and he, with judgment, like you said, he took his jeans and he put them in the microwave because he thought he could, dry them that way. Yeah. Started a fire. And thankfully, she was going to stop at Walmart and she's like, no, I better get home. And she came home. And this is in a 10-minute, time period that he's alone. and the house would have burned down had she not gotten there. Who knows what would have happened to him, to her dogs, everything. So that was their wake up call that he can no longer be home alone, even for, a minute. But so that just reminded me when you said judgment, and, that's a perfect example.
Well, and it doesn't take long to have those situations happen, like you're saying. It could be just a moment, someone walks away and that happens. There's behavioral changes. Someone might be easily confused, suspicious, or fearful. So if you have someone that has been coming to the home and helping clean, or you want someone to come and, provide in-home just support for the person, if someone's suspicious or confused or fearful, this might become a combative or agitated situation. I've heard of a lot of people that they don't let people in their houses, even though the family wants to have someone come support, or they're going to go run errands. So they have someone come hang out at the house, and the person with dementia just can't handle it. They're not recognizable to them. So it's really important to take those things into consideration too. Physical ability. So, things as we age, things change physically, as you probably talk about on this show, but just issues with balance, walking, your eyesight declining or changing. There's just different things that can happen on top of dementia. So that becomes a safety hazard at home. There's also spatial things that can happen with dementia. So what looks to me like rug on the floor, there's a lot of pattern to it. It could be very overwhelming, and it looks like it could be moving, or it could just be confusing, or you could have black and white checkered floor, and the black looks like is interpreted in the brain as a whole. So there's these different things that we just need to take into consideration for someone with dementia. Light even can affect the way someone perceives a room. So if you have deep shadows in a room and not a lot of adequate light, so that comes back to senses and changes in vision, hearing, sensitivity to temperatures. I recently saw someone that was experiencing their loved one was just very cold all the time, even though the thermostat is on 80 all the time. So there's just this different perception of weather outside too. I mean, I've worked with people that dress inappropriately to go outside. So it could be winter and they're putting shorts on. So those things, as you imagine, could become major safety risks for the home. So we're going to talk a little bit about things you can do in your home just to help prolong possibly the safety of the person living in the home environment, and just things to consider as we try to keep our loved ones at home as long as possible. And keep in mind those things that we talked about too when it comes to safety and how dementia affects safety as we go through this list. So general home safety tips include storing potentially hazardous items. Lotion could be confused as mayonnaise, or, I've seen paint confused as food, depending on if you set up a paint table and you don't want to put paint in a bowl because then it might look like cereal or soup or something, or ketchup even, if you have little small containers. So medication, you can imagine medication management must be difficult for someone if they can't recall whether they took their medication today. You start talking about medication for diabetes, blood pressure, some major medication that needs to be managed appropriately each day. That can be complicated. So medication management becomes very important for people that are progressed in their dementia.
And maybe not leaving the medication out if you're managing it for them so that they don't go and take it on their own and over-medicate.
Yeah, right. So alcohol, locking up matches, anything, sharp objects sometimes. I've even heard of families that have taken the knobs off of the stove that turn the stove on. Small appliances and tools, you can keep those in a secured cabinet. Keeping cleaning products out of the way. Like those laundry packs, they look like
the Tide Pods.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't necessarily, if you're used to liquid laundry your whole life, and then all of a sudden your family uses those little packs, it may look unrecognizable to you. But bleach, you want to really consider locking up anything that may be a harmful chemical. That can be helpful. If you're like me, I have stuff like that all over the house. So having a dedicated space for that might be helpful. Let's see, what else have we got? Make sure that you also have emergency number saved in your phone or on the fridge. So poison control, we all know 911, but do we know the number for poison control? Or even local family member, or, say there's someone coming in while you go to run groceries, they need to make sure that those numbers are accessible too, as well as like a list of medications that a person takes if they end up going to the hospital for some reason. Those doctors and healthcare workers need to know exactly what they're taking. So having a list handy can be helpful, usually near the fridge or on the fridge. Make sure carbon monoxide and smoke detectors and fire extinguishers are available and inspected regularly. This applies to any and all
Exactly.
people.
Yeah, we should all do that. Yes, for sure. Kind of going back to things that they could mistake. I was reading something about like a lot of people have like fake fruit. I know my mom always used to have fake fruit, but they may pick that up and eat, try to eat a fake apple or whatever because it looks so real and they just don't realize it.
Yeah, there's those things too that you should probably consider in your house. If it's necessary to have the fake fruit, or if that's confusing for your loved one, it kind of depends on the situation too and how progressed the person is, or if they even go for that item. But if your mom loves bananas and you have fake bananas on your table, you might want to consider switching that out for flowers or something a little bit different. So safety when it comes to walking throughout the house, and this applies to senior living too. You don't want to have a bunch of rugs that are easy, that you can trip over pretty easily. You don't want to have extension cords hanging out or excessive clutter. So keeping your space, walkways clear. You want to also consider night lights and adequate lighting for every space, including hallways that might be darker, that don't have windows. Someone with dementia may not always walk into a room and think, I need to turn the light switch on. I've seen that many times. So having night lights can be very helpful. And they can be flush with the wall too. So you can find the kind that, just come on automatically and if the light's off, and they can be flush with the wall. Or there's even low cost options with all the LED, technology out there nowadays. So you definitely want to keep the walkways well lit and clear clutter. As far as large furniture goes within the rooms, you want to make sure that's also kind of clear and out of the way of walkways. It's really easy to bump into something. Do you ever bump into the corner of a bed or a cabinet and it just is so painful? Well, for someone that's older, that might happen, but they could trip over that. It could result in a fall. And we really want to make sure we're preventing falls in our spaces. Our seniors are very vulnerable to broken bones or hips, and we just want to make sure that, and then going to the hospital can be a little, challenging as well. So
exactly.
Well, then that furniture.
And we always hear, or I do when I'm talking to families, they'll have, a family member diagnosed with dementia, and they also have mobility issues, and they forget to use their walker. They need to use a walker. They can't remember to use it. So I don't know what the answer to that is other than just keeping an eye on them and having the environment as safe as possible with as few, fall hazards as can be.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people love those walkers that have the wheels and like a little basket and stuff. But for someone with dementia, that might not be the safest option because they can go, they may forget to lock it before they get up and try to use it, and then they can go forward. So I would, recommend working with your doctor, your home health company, if you have one, to figure out what the best walker situation is for your loved one. I think those classic silver ones with the tennis balls can be helpful because you don't have to lock them and they can stay close by. But yeah, that becomes kind of an issue too, definitely. So let's see. We want to make sure that someone has the right shoes on, some non-slip shoes, so they can walk around their house okay. And when they're in, have you ever had a trouble getting up from a deep couch or like maybe a bed that was too tall, is hard to get into? Yes. You want to make sure that there's leveled, supportive furniture for an aging person, that it's easy to get out of. You're not sinking too much. There's different adaptive chairs out there that help someone get out. If you husband loves that lazy boy, they make them where they can kind of lift a little bit.
Lift chairs. Yeah, those are very cool.
Yeah, but they definitely need assistance in using them, but they're quite comfortable. So just take that into consideration too, because you might have to adjust the height of a bed or even put a bed in the corner as opposed to in the middle of the room, just for, safety reasons, and only getting out on one side and maybe not rolling out of bed at night.
There are some adaptive, equipment things that I've seen where you can put a rail, like to help someone get out of bed. It's like it's not like a huge rail, like a bed rail. You use it to just support yourself and help you get out of bed.
Like a hand assistance. Yeah, there's those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. I've even seen mesh material side, like something on the side that you can put on there, so it's like a bumper, and it attaches by putting it under your mattress, so it's kind of an L shape. So there are some things like that out there, and you can always, again, work with your medical professionals to figure out medical equipment if you do need that. There's suggestions, and I don't see this a lot, so you have to really figure this out with your loved one. But if you have huge glass doors in your house with no window treatments, you might want to consider some kind of sticker at eye level that shows that this is an exit or this is a door, or a label, so that the person isn't walking into the glass. It's not necessarily super common, but again, it depends on the person and their experience of dementia and how their brain's working. It might look like you could walk right through it, especially if you keep those windows super clean. You want to ensure those doors are visible. You can also do a latch or a deadbolt also on the doors, just to help for extra safety. It's not necessarily recommended to lock people into spaces, but for the purposes of, if someone's wandering at night and trying to get into the backyard, they might not be able to operate that latch or something when you're together inside.
I had a family I worked with. The husband was caring for his wife who had dementia, and she would get up at night, and he was so exhausted, bless his heart. So one night he didn't hear her get up, and she got up and he couldn't find her. And so he's looking all over the house. He's looking outside. Turns out he finds her in the garage, and she was just walking in circles in the garage, and he didn't know how long she had been there. And, that was sort of his, moment where he said, I can't do this anymore because there's so many dangerous things in a garage. So what he did until we could figure out placement for her, he put a latch, like you're saying, on the door leading to the garage, so that wouldn't happen again.
Yeah. So that's a good idea too, because the garage isn't the only exit within the house, and it's a good place to store things sometimes that might be hazardous to someone living with dementia. So that's a really good idea. This is not the same at all, but I have a 5-year-old, and we have doors we don't want her to open, like the front door, and there's different doors. So we've put those kind of
plastic
childproof.
Yeah. I remember those when my kids were little. Half the time I couldn't open the door. So those are effective.
Yeah, especially on the front door, because she could just walk right out if she wanted to. If I didn't have one on there. So those are just some things that you can also consider. You want to consider removing firearms from the home and storing them in a locked cabinet. If you have those accessible, that can become very dangerous for a person living with dementia, especially if they're confused or are perceiving, things in a suspicious way. So it becomes very dangerous. If you do have firearms in the home, you want to make sure that those are in a safe place and locked up. One of the suggestions we have too is to remove locks from the interior doors of the house, so the person with dementia doesn't accidentally get locked in the bathroom or the bedroom, and you have kind of no way other than to find a safety, one of those safety pins to open up the door. So that's something that we suggest as well. There are programs too for wandering response. Many people with dementia will wander in their journey. And sometimes that's the red flag for placement, Lori. There was a family that I worked with, and that was kind of their transition point when her husband started leaving the home. And there was just one day, luckily they had really great neighbors, and he was just walking around the neighborhood. But, it was very scary for her to not be able to find her husband, who had never really wandered before.
Yeah. And very dangerous as well, not just because of wandering, but I had one gentleman where a lot of homes and neighborhoods look very similar. And so he went to a house a street over, and he swore it was his house, and he's trying to get in the house. Well, if someone's trying to get in your house and you don't know they have dementia,
Yeah.
You don't know what could happen, especially if maybe they have a firearm or something. So, he was trying to get in a window. He was doing all this stuff. And thankfully they realized something wasn't right and were able, they called the police and they got him back home. But that was, a wake up call for that family as well.
Yeah, that's something to consider. But there are wandering response services out there. You can always call the Alzheimer's Association. We work with Medical Alert, Safe Return. So you can, to enrollment, I'll put the number out there. It's 1-800-272-3900. That's our 24/7 helpline number. And basically it's a piece of jewelry that identifies Alzheimer's. And then there's a response team that you're involved with, one of those like National Call Center response teams. And then they also make them for caregivers because people always ask me why, but it's the caregiver has a loved one at home with dementia and they end up in the hospital or something. That bracelet notifies the people that are taking care of that caregiver that someone needs to go check on that family member at home or wherever.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And not to keep telling stories, but this just keeps reminding me, we had a lady who her son took care of her and he was in his 50s and he had a massive heart attack. And thankfully, they didn't have any family close by. All the family was like in Alaska. They were really far away and couldn't get here quickly. But the neighbor knew that she had dementia. She was very advanced. And the neighbors took care of her till family could get there. And then we could, figure out placement for her. But I like that idea with the caregiver, because if the caregiver is unconscious, can't speak, whatever, someone will know that there's someone at home that needs to be cared for. I hadn't even heard of that, but that's a great tip.
Yeah, and there's chapters that could provide scholarship for the bracelet if cost is an issue. So we never want anyone to not be able to be part of that program if they need it. So please feel free to check that out for any of those folks that are listening.
Do you know approximately what the cost is on those type of programs?
I think the jewelry is kind of in the $50 range. And then there's an annual fee to be enrolled in this service nationally. But again, we can help provide coverage for that. Our callers just need to let us know that they're interested in the scholarship program.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
So if we have some time, I'd like to go through a couple different rooms that are potentially hazardous for folks with dementia.
Sure. Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the kitchen. Okay. Think of all the things we do in the kitchen. So we definitely recommend using appliances that have automatic shutoff features. Prevent unsafe stove usage by applying stove knob covers, or again, I've heard of removing knobs. Turning off the gas light when the stove is not in use. Disconnect the garbage disposal. As you can imagine, that might be a little hazardous if things get down there and we're using it. Mark food with a purchase date. Regularly check for and throw away expired items. If you're a busy woman like me, sometimes, the fridge gets forgotten about keeping things up to date.
So science experiments in there, yes.
Yeah, I have to remind myself regularly, okay, time to clean it up, time to check on it. So anyway, you just don't want anything in there that's been there too long and someone with dementia sees it and they're like, oh, I'm going to try eating this, and then it can make them sick. So keep that in mind. Discard toxic plants in the house. If you're an animal lover, you probably have plants in your house that are safe for them. Mm-hmm. It's the same for humans. We want to make sure that there's no toxic plants in the home. Decorative fruits that might be mistaken for real food, like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
Remove vitamins, prescription drugs, sugar substitutes, and seasonings from the kitchen table and counters. Put those kind of out of sight, out of mind.
I saw that with the vitamins. And so I totally got it with the vitamins. What seasonings, like cinnamon, or what other seasonings?
Anything. I mean, think if you're having a bowl of cereal and you think salt is sugar and you're pouring a bunch of salt on your cereal, or you use the pepper and they're using way too much, and then you have a sneezing fit, or and it could come back to dietary restrictions too. Sure. If you have diabetes, you need to restrict the amount of types of foods you have, and so you just need to make sure that access is kind of out of sight, out of mind, and provide that food for them. Or, it's really meaningful to still allow help with preparing your own food for someone with dementia. So just having the stuff that's available and appropriate for them to have. So that's kind of some kitchen suggestions. Maybe, store your knives. If you're normally storing them on the counter, maybe get the ones that have covers and store them in the drawer.
Those
or
locks on the
covers
drawer.
things. Yeah. So when we go to the laundry room, you want to make sure to clean out lint screens and dryer ducts regularly to prevent fires. That applies to every house and home. Consider installing the safety locks that we talked about, but they have them for washing machines and dryers too. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that nothing inappropriate ends up in your washer. I don't know if you've ever washed a pen on accident or something like that, and what a mess it can cause. But you definitely don't want it to have the dryer mixed up with the washer, and things can happen, or you pour soap in the dryer. So you just have to take that into consideration, because it comes back to not only judgment, but just confusion about what appliance does what. Mm-hmm. So keep all the cleaning products, of course, that we talked about locked up, stored somewhere. This goes for the bathroom too. And some of these are just safety suggestions anyway, like installing grab bars in your bathrooms to provide additional supports. Make sure your water temperature, like you can cap the heat of your water temperature in the shower and things to help prevent burned skin or scalding of your skin. I don't know if anybody out there loves to take hot showers, but my husband does. But you probably, when you have dementia, you probably don't know what the limit is.
I think a lot of these things are things, and I'm not comparing, an older adult to a child, but a lot of it is like childproofing. Like if you think about when your kids were toddlers, we did all of this. Like we turned the heat down on the hot water heater because, in case the kids turned on the water, which one of them did, but so that they wouldn't get burned. And put, the locks on the cabinets, all the different things you're talking about. Kind of think home safety, things that you might have done when your children were young.
Yeah. Now take into consideration all the childproofing you do for your kids, but then you add years of experience of being able to use everything in your house. And then, so there's this desire and need to still do that. Sure. But then just the safety that comes with that. I mean, sometimes we have safety issues ourselves as adults, just forgetting, having too much on our mind and walking away from, oh, I need to stir the pot of whatever the food. Oh, shoot, I burned it, or I forgot the thing in the oven and now my cookies are burnt. So those are just things that we have to be extra cautious for when we're talking about a dementia diagnosis. And it's really important to get that dementia diagnosis early. Like I said before, if you're noticing warning signs, you want to get ahead of it, because the safety stuff becomes quite hazardous to someone that's experiencing signs of dementia. And so if you don't know that that's going on for your loved one, you don't know to put these safety things in place. So this becomes one of the things that really becomes part of the care plan. One of the things too that's suggested for bathroom is, those textured stickers to help prevent falls or slips in the shower. Mm-hmm. When we go to the bedroom, again, you want to consider the bed height. If people use the electric blankets, my dad uses an electric blanket because they live in Kansas City and it gets cold in the winter. So they love their heating pads and electric blankets, but you have to consider that as a fire hazard potentially, or to burn the skin. Those things can get hot. Provide seating near the bed to help with dressing. Having some kind of chair that's, good height and everything would be great in the bedroom. And then ensure closet shelves are at an accessible height so that items are easy to reach. So that might be some adjustments in the closet. And you also want to prevent someone from wanting to climb in their closet to get something. That can help prevent falling objects from above or having a fall risk. I also, this isn't on this list, but I do recommend limiting the stuff that maybe is in the closet, because it can get overwhelming to have too many choices. So if it's summer, maybe just have the summer clothing available and appropriate shoes that are available, as opposed to, walking into my closet and I have stuff for all seasons and shoes for all seasons and towels and linens and all sorts of things.
Well, and that would do two things for them. It'd be less overwhelming, and it would let them still be independent to make their choice of what they're going to wear. And that they're going to choose something appropriate if it's summer and you only have summer clothes in there.
Right. So I think that can be helpful. So sometimes, it's good to donate your clutter and reduce the clutter we talked about today. So that's kind of the overall theme of the safety at home we have for today. I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely.
And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer.
Yeah, share that number again. What was it, the number that you gave out?
Yes. So we have the bracelets. The Alzheimer's Association works with Medical Alert Safe Return. So the number is actually our 24/7 helpline. So that number is 1-800-272-3900. And that will connect you. You just tell them that you're interested in Medical Alert, and they will help you get through that process.
Okay. And I know the Alzheimer's Association website is amazing, and you could go on there and just search for home safety. Would that pull up everything, all the stuff we've talked about?
Yeah, you can actually go to alz.org/safety. Okay. So you can just type that into your browser. And what's going to come up, Lori, is more than just home safety. Driving, it's our whole safety center. So wandering, home safety, dementia and driving, technology safety, medication safety, traveling, the considerations you want to take for traveling, preparing for emergencies, and abuse and neglect. Okay. So those are the things that are going to come up for our safety center.
Okay, great. So lots and lots of information. They have a wonderful website if you have not been there. But I so appreciate you being on, Megan. This was some just excellent information. And I think it's so important for everyone to consider home safety, no matter if you're getting older and living alone, think about safety, but also even more important, if the person that you love and care for has dementia. So thank you, as always, for being on the show.
Of course, thanks for having me.
We have her on each month to cover a different topic about Alzheimer's, because there are so many topics to share, so much information. But again, thank you so much for being on, and thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you next week.